I want you to picture a specific, probably painful moment. You're standing at a counter at the DMV, or maybe you're staring at a letter from your child's school district about a new zoning policy.
Oh, I know this feeling.
Or, you're reading a ballot proposition that's 3 paragraphs long and seems to be written in a dialect of Latin you never ever studied.
It's that universal experience of, I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at right now.
Exactly that. And in that moment, be honest. You don't feel like a powerful, engaged, we the people kind of citizen.
Not at all.
You feel small. You feel frustrated. And if we're being really honest, you just want to go home and watch Netflix.
You check out, it's a survival mechanism. Yeah. You disengage.
And we spend so much time these days asking this question, right?
Yeah.
Why is democracy struggling? And the conversation, it almost immediately pivots to values.
Always.
We say people are too angry, or they've lost their moral compass, the youth are apathetic, or we're just too polarized to function.
That is the prevailing narrative, isn't it? It's the idea that the software of our society, our values, our morals, our patriotism, that it's all corrupted.
But I've been spending time with this stack of documents that argues the exact opposite. This source material, the 7 Critical Literacies for a Thriving Democracy, it posits the problem isn't the software at all. It's the hardware. It suggests that what we're witnessing isn't a collapse of values, it's a breakdown of capacity.
Which is such a vital distinction to make. It changes the entire diagnosis.
How so?
Well, if you assume it's a values problem, you assume people are bad citizens. But if it's a capacity problem, it suggests that the vast majority of people actually want to participate. They want to belong, they want to understand, they want to help their neighbors.
That they can't.
They lack the specific technical skills, the literacies, to make those wants actionable.
So the result of that isn't really apathy.
No, not at all. This source has this brilliant line. It says, the result of missing literacies isn't apathy. It is a rational response to illegibility.
Illegibility.
If the world is unreadable, checking out makes total sense. If you can't read the instructions to the game, you stop playing the game.
That concept of illegibility is what we're going to tear apart today. We're going to walk through these 7 layers of literacy, starting from the absolute basics of, reading and math, and moving all the way up to how we handle our own internal emotional states.
And we're doing this to build a profile. We're trying to define the model citizen. Now, when I say that, I don't mean a good person in a moral sense. I don't mean a Boy Scout who never breaks a rule.
Right. This isn't about moral superiority here. It's not about being better than your neighbor.
It's about functionality. We're looking for the model citizen who is informed, confident, and empowered. Someone who doesn't just let democracy happen to them, but knows how to, drive the car.
I think it's also important to note where this source material comes from. This isn't from some big think tank in D.C. or an Ivy League philosophy department.
No, it's very grounded.
The author talks about proximity. This whole framework is built on observations from libraries, neighborhood centers, schools, the hyperlocal level.
Which is where democracy actually lives. We have this tendency to think democracy is what happens on cable news or in the Senate chamber.
The big dramatic stuff.
Right. But this source argues that democracy is actually tested when you try to fill out a permit form or understand a notice about your property taxes, or when you have to disagree with a neighbor about a fence without screaming.
If you can't navigate those things, you aren't really free. You're just, you're subject to the system.
Precisely. You're a passenger, not a driver.
So let's get into the hardware. Let's look at the stack. Layer 1, the absolute foundation. The source calls this functional literacy.
The quiet prerequisite of participation. This is the layer we usually take for granted until it's missing.
Okay, so when I hear functional literacy, I immediately think about, reading levels, like, can you read a novel? But the source seems to be pointing at something a bit more specific than just decoding text.
It's much more specific. It's about whether you can navigate daily life without needing a translator. I mean, think about that model citizen we're trying to build.
Okay.
To be empowered, you cannot be dependent on intermediaries to interpret the world for you. If you need a lawyer to explain your lease, or a tax professional to explain your paycheck, or your niece to explain the healthcare portal, you're vulnerable.
You're outsourcing your own agency.
You are. And that vulnerability, it creates fear. One of the core competencies in the section that really struck me is instructional literacy.
Instructional literacy.
The ability to follow direction.
That sounds, I have to be honest, that sounds incredibly boring. Can you follow instructions?
Yeah.
It feels like something out of elementary school.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But flip it around. The source makes this fantastic point that without instructional literacy, rules stop feeling like guides and they start feeling like traps.
Explain that. How does a rule feel like a trap?
Okay, imagine you're trying to apply for a building permit or maybe even just contest a parking ticket. If you possess high instructional literacy, you look at the form and you see a process. Step A, step B, step C.
A pathway.
A pathway. It might be annoying, it might be bureaucratic, but it is navigable. You can see the path from here to there.
Okay, I'll make it.
Now imagine you lack that literacy. You look at that same form, and it's a wall of jargon. You don't see a process, you see a minefield.
Right.
You try to fill it out, it gets rejected, you don't understand why, you try again, reject it again. Suddenly, you don't feel like a citizen interacting with a service. You feel like the system is designed to catch you failing.
And that leads directly to the psychological side of this, which the source calls confidence in use. I hadn't really thought about confidence as a literacy skill before.
It's absolutely essential. You can have the technical skill to read, but if you lack the confidence to use that skill without fear of embarrassment, you'll self-censor. The source talks about undue fear, avoidance, or self-censorship.
The phrase they used that really stuck with me was self-select out of civic life.
That is the tragedy right there. I
Yeah.
mean, just imagine a person who cares deeply about their neighborhood. They have opinions, they have needs, but they are terrified that if they go to a public meeting and try to speak or try to fill out a comment card, they'll do it wrong.
They'll look stupid.
They'll look stupid. And the risk of shame is so much greater than the desire to participate.
So they just stay home.
Exactly. They remove themselves from the table. A model citizen needs the resilience to say, I am going to engage with this, even if it's complicated, and I'm not going to let the complexity shame me into silence.
We also have to talk about functional numeracy here.
Yeah.
Because numbers are effectively the language of government.
Numbers are arguments. In a democracy, budgets, tax rates, crime statistics, timelines, these are all arguments dressed up as objective facts.
But usually we treat them as these facts that are just over our heads.
We do, but the model citizen needs to be able to interrogate them. If a mayor stands up and says, we're cutting the library budget by only 2% and it won't affect services, that is a numerical argument.
Right. And the person without that numeracy just kind of nods and says, well, 2% sounds small.
Correct. But the functionally literate citizen, they do the mental math. They ask, wait, what's the total budget?
Yeah.
Okay, 2% is actually $500,000. That's the entire weekend staff. How do you remove the staff without affecting services?
So without that numeracy, you can't challenge these numerical assertions. You just have to trust the authority figures.
And blind trust is not a strategy for a thriving democracy. When functional literacy is missing, systems become hostile. Exclusion isn't explicit. Nobody's putting up a sign saying you can't come in.
Right.
The exclusion is procedural. The door is locked by complexity.
Okay, so let's say we've established this base. Our model citizen can read the form, they can do the math, and they have the confidence to actually submit the paperwork.
Yeah.
They have the baseline mechanical skills. But just because you can read the words, that doesn't mean the words are true.
Which brings us to layer 2, information literacy, the filter.
I noticed the source defines this as a discipline of relating to information. Not just finding it, but relating to it. That's an interesting choice of words.
It is, because it's a discipline. We are drowning in content. We all know this. The model citizen isn't the person who reads everything. That's impossible. They're the person who has a system for deciding what is worth reading. They move from reaction to judgment.
Let's dig into this competency called recognizing information need. This feels like it goes against everything social media trains us to do.
It absolutely does. It is a deeply humble act. It is the ability to pause and say, I actually don't know enough about this to have an opinion yet.
That is a superpower in the modern world. There is so much pressure to have a hot take instantly.
Yeah.
Something happens, within minutes you're expected to pick a side.
And the model citizen resists that. They recognize when their understanding is incomplete. They pause before they conclude.
But once they decide to fill that gap, they have to evaluate credibility. And the source makes a point here that I think is crucial. There is no such thing as the view from nowhere.
No, that is a total myth. All information is produced within a context. Humans write articles. Humans conduct studies. Humans take photos. And humans have contexts and biases and funders.
Right. Who paid for this? Why was this produced now? What's the angle?
So the goal isn't to find the one pure, unbiased source.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't. The goal is to assess the trustworthiness of the source within its context. You don't throw everything out because it has a bias. You understand the bias and weigh the information accordingly.
But here's where it gets really, really difficult. The source lists revising understanding as a core competency. Basically, the willingness to change your mind.
The hardest thing to do for anyone.
Why is it so hard? I mean, rationally, we all know we should update our views when we get new facts. But physically, it feels awful.
It feels awful because we tie our beliefs to our identity. If I admit I was wrong about a policy or a candidate or a scientific fact, I don't just feel corrected. I feel like I'm losing a piece of myself. I feel like I'm betraying my team.
The source says explicitly, changing your mind shouldn't mean a loss of identity.
Right. The model citizen treats their understanding like software. When credible new data appears, you update the software. You don't get mad at the computer for needing an update. You don't feel like a failure. You just do it. That is resilience.
And if you can't do that,
If you can't do that, you aren't participating in democracy anymore. You're just defending a fortress. You're engaged in what the source calls a performance of certainty.
certainty travels faster than understanding. That's a line from the text.
It is. And the model citizen is the speed bump. They're the one who slows down to verify.
Okay, so we've got the skills to read and the skills to filter for the truth. But now we have to look at the environment where all this information actually lives.
Okay.
Which brings us to layer 3, digital literacy.
And we have to be very careful with this term because it gets misused constantly.
Totally. I usually think digital literacy means, like, can you use Excel? Or do you know how to reset your router?
And the source is emphatic. No, it is not technical proficiency. You can be a wizard at coding and still be digitally illiterate in a civic sense.
So what is the civic sense of digital literacy?
It's understanding power, design, and how these online systems are built to shape your behavior. It's understanding that when you are online, you are in a constructed environment.
This connects back to our model citizen being empowered. You can't be empowered if you don't know you're being manipulated.
Exactly. Let's look at algorithmic awareness. The model citizen knows that their newsfeed is not a mirror of reality. It's a curated, personalized list designed to keep them scrolling.
That distinction is so vital. If you think your feed is the world, you end up thinking the world is way more extreme than it actually is.
You mistake the map for the territory. You think, wow, everyone agrees with me, or wow, everyone is enraged about this specific topic. But the model citizen, they step back and say, this is what the machine wants me to see because it keeps me engaged.
Another big one here is data awareness and privacy. It's understanding the trade-off. We're always trading autonomy for access.
We are, every single day. We want the free apps, so we give up the data. The model citizen isn't necessarily paranoid. They might still use the app, but they understand the transaction. They know they are the product.
I really like the point about understanding digital systems, and specifically the idea of defaults and constraints. The source gives this example. If a system is hard to use, the illiterate user blames themselves. They say, I'm just bad with computers.
That breaks my heart. You see this with older generations especially. They try to access a government service online, the interface is confusing, the buttons are hidden, and they internalize that failure. They think they are incompetent.
But the digitally literate citizen looks at that same confusing website and sees something else entirely.
They see a design choice, they say this is a bad design, or even this is a hostile design. They understand that the friction was put there, either through negligence or intentionally, to shape behavior.
So it's the difference between resignation and critique.
Yes. Digital illiteracy manifests as resignation. We just click, I agree, because we feel we have no choice. The model citizen refuses to be resigned. They recognize the friction as part of the system's design, and they navigate it with their eyes open.
Okay, moving on. The digital world is just the pipe. Layer 4 is about the water flowing through that pipe.
Yeah.
Media literacy, the narrative.
This is all about meaning making.
How is this different from information literacy? We already talked about vetting facts.
Information literacy is about facts and credibility. You know, is this true? Media literacy is about stories and influence. It asks, how is this making me feel and why?
Okay, so the model citizen here is an active interpreter.
Correct. They don't just consume, they analyze. One of the core competencies is message construction. Just realizing that nothing in media is accidental.
Nothing.
Every camera angle, every headline, every music cue, It was all assembled for a purpose.
Give me an example of how that plays out.
Okay, imagine a news segment about a political candidate. The camera angle is low, looking up, making them look dominant. The lighting is harsh. The background music has a low, ominous thrum.
Right.
None of that is accidental. That is a constructed message designed to make you feel intimidation or fear.
And if you aren't media literate, you just feel the fear. You don't see the camera angle or hear the music consciously.
Exactly. You react to the stimulus without seeing the mechanism.
That leads right to emotional influence.
Mm.
This is the one that I think catches the most people off guard. We get triggered, and we think that reaction is just natural, organic.
But often it is engineered. Media thrives on engagement, and the easiest way to get engagement is to trigger high arousal emotions. Outrage, fear, smugness.
So what's the actionable skill for the model citizen? Is it just to be cynical about everything?
No, cynicism is just another form of checking out. The skill is the pause. The model citizen notices, wow, I am feeling incredibly angry right now. And then they ask why. Who benefits from me feeling this angry? They interrogate the emotion instead of just writing it.
There's also the distinction between reporting and commentary.
A vital boundary that has almost completely dissolved on cable news and the social media.
Right. You watch a show, and it looks like news, it feels like news, but it's actually just someone's opinion about the news.
The model citizen can strip away the opinion to find the descriptive account of the event. They know the difference between the bill passed by 5 votes, which is reporting, and the bill passed and it's a disaster for America, which is commentary.
And finally for this section, attention management. I love this idea. Treating your attention as a finite civic resource.
It is a beautiful phrase. We only have so much bandwidth. If we let the media dictate what we care about through urgency, the breaking news banners, the countdown clocks, the red font, we lose sight of importance.
So the model citizen guards their attention.
They decide what to focus on, rather than letting the breaking news ticker decide for them.
So we've built a citizen who can read, filter truth, navigate the digital trap, and decode the media narrative. They're incredibly capable of understanding the world, but now they actually have to do something.
Exactly.
Layer 5, civic literacy, the system.
This is the pivot from knowing to acting.
And this isn't just that old schoolhouse rock song, I'm just a bill.
It's deeper than that. It's about orientation, knowing where you stand in the machinery of power.
The source makes a distinction that I thought was really sharp between nominal rights and exercise rights.
That's the key. You have the right to free speech or to petition the government. Those are nominal. They exist on paper. But do you know how to use them effectively? That's participation pathways.
Knowing the pathway, because without that, people they express opinions without any leverage.
Exactly. You see this all the time. People yelling at their televisions or posting angry 40-part threads on a private social media account. That is expression. Might feel good,
Sure.
but it isn't leverage. It doesn't move the machine.
So where does the model citizen go? What do they do?
The model citizen knows where to push. If there is a pothole on their street, they don't tweet at the president, they call public works. If they want to change a zoning law, they go to the city council meeting. They match the action to the correct lever of power.
If you don't know the pathway, your energy just dissipates into the air.
And that leads back to the feeling of apathy. We come full circle to that idea. Disengagement looks like apathy, but it's often a rational response to a system that refuses to explain itself. If I don't know which lever to pull, I stop pulling levers.
There's also a tough pill to swallow here, I think, regarding rights awareness versus responsibility and obligation.
Oh, yeah. We love to talk about rights. I have a right to this, I have a right to that. We are much less enthusiastic about obligations. But the model citizen knows they are linked. You cannot have the right to a fair trial without the obligation of jury service. You can't have the right to safe streets without the obligation of compliance and contribution.
It's the civic agency piece, the belief that your actions can actually matter.
But that belief has to be grounded in reality. It's not a delusion of grandeur. It's a mechanical understanding. If I do X, Y is more likely to happen. That's what empowers a citizen. It's not hope, it's knowledge.
Okay, so that handles the government. But we don't just live with governments, we live with other people. Layer 6, community literacy.
This is the shift from the procedural to the relational. Civic literacy handles the state, community literacy handles the neighbors.
And this feels messier.
It is infinitely messier. These are the informal relational spaces, the PTA meeting, the church group, the block party, the homeowners association. This is where democracy is actually lived, day in and day out.
And the model citizen here is defined as someone who can maintain relationships even when agreement isn't possible.
Which is becoming a lost art. We are seeing this sorting where people only want to be in community with those who agree with them 100% of the time.
The section on communication across differences really stood out to me.
Yes. It is about engaging with divergent views without erasing oneself or others.
Mm.
That means I can listen to you, I can disagree with you passionately about tax policy or where the fence line should be, and I can still treat you as a neighbor.
I don't have to convert you, and I don't have to destroy you.
Precisely.
But that implies conflict. And I think most of us really hate conflict.
We do. We have this fantasy of a conflict-free community where everyone just gets along, but the source is clear. Conflict is inevitable. It's a sign of life. The goal isn't to avoid conflict, it's to engage in it without escalation.
Okay.
The model citizen doesn't run from tension. They have the skills to say, okay, we have a problem here. How do we solve it without burning the house down?
There's also this concept of shared responsibility and stewardship. The source distinguishes membership from mere proximity.
Proximity just means we live near each other. We occupy the same space. Membership means we're responsible for our shared space, whether that's a physical park or a digital forum.
It's that stewardship aspect.
Exactly. The model citizen sees a piece of trash on the sidewalk and picks it up both metaphorically and literally. They don't say, that's the government's job. They say, this is our space.
I love that framing. Membership versus proximity. That really sticks with you.
It changes how you walk down the street.
Okay, we have arrived at the final layer. Layer 7, the stabilizer. Emotional literacy.
This is the surprise. This is the one that most people don't think of as a literacy for democracy.
Right. I think of emotional intelligence as a self-help thing, or something you work on in a relationship. But the source argues that without this, everything else we just talked about, it all falls apart.
Think about it. You can have all the civic knowledge, all the media literacy, all the facts in the world. But if you cannot regulate your own internal state, you become a wrecking ball in the public square.
The phrase they use is incredible. Governance at the most proximal level. Governing yourself.
The model citizen provides stability to the group. They do not export their internal chaos into shared spaces.
That is, whoa. Do not export their internal chaos. I feel like I see that happening every single day online.
We all do. And let's be honest, we've all done it. We've all had a bad day and taken it out on a comment section or a customer service representative.
So what is the core skill we need here? What do we practice?
Distress tolerance.
Explain that one.
Distress tolerance is the ability to stay engaged even when things are uncomfortable or uncertain. Democracy is stressful. You will lose votes. You will hear things that upset you. You will face ambiguity. If you cannot tolerate that distress, you have two bad options. You withdraw to protect yourself, or you explode to force a resolution.
So the model citizen can sit in the fire a little bit? They don't have to run away or pour gasoline on it?
They can sit in the discomfort without lashing out. That is what keeps the conversation going. It's the essential ingredient.
And emotional regulation goes hand in hand with that. Preserving relational integrity.
It's the ability to say, I am angry, but I am not going to burn this bridge because I need to work with you tomorrow. It's thinking long-term about the relationship rather than short-term about the emotional release.
And what about accountability for impact? This distinction between intent and outcome.
It's crucial. You might mean well. You might be just asking questions. But if your impact caused harm, the model citizen owns that. They don't hide behind, well, I didn't mean to. They say, I see that I hurt you, and I am responsible for that.
The aha moment for me in this final section was that emotional literacy isn't just about feelings. It's about infrastructure.
Yes. It's the quiet infrastructure of a healthy society. Without it, information becomes ammunition. Community becomes a battleground. Emotional literacy is the dampener that stops the vibrations from tearing the whole machine apart.
So we have built quite a stack here. Let's look at the full picture of this model citizen we've been assembling.
It's a really comprehensive profile.
They can read the form. That's functional literacy.
They vet the facts information literacy.
They see the algorithm that's feeding them content digital.
They decode the narrative behind the news media.
They know the process, how to actually make change. That's civic.
They respect the neighbor, even in disagreement community.
And they regulate themselves. Emotional.
Exactly.
When you list it all out like that, it's kind of intimidating. It feels like a lot to ask of one person.
It is. It's a high bar.
Yeah.
But we have to remember the epilogue from the source material. This isn't a checklist for perfection. You don't pass or fail. It's a template for capacity building.
It's a practice. Democracy is not something we inherit intact. It's something we practice every day.
And we are all developing these literacies all the time. Maybe you're great at civic literacy, you know exactly who to call at City Hall, but your digital literacy is weak. Or you're incredibly emotionally literate, but you lack the functional numeracy to really understand the school budget.
And that's okay.
That's okay. The point is to recognize the gaps and work on them. The goal isn't to be the perfect citizen tomorrow. It's to be a slightly more capable one today.
And there's one final concept I want to leave our listeners with, which the author touches on at the very end. It's not just about building your capacity. It's about hospitality.
That's such a beautiful turn, because if you do have these literacies, if the system is legible to you, you have a choice. You can hoard that power for yourself, or you can hold the door open.
You can be the translator for the person standing next to you at the DMV who finds it all unreadable.
And that is the ultimate act of citizenship,
Yeah.
sharing the literacy. Because at the end of the day, the model citizen realizes that a well-operating community isn't defined by unanimity. It's not about everyone agreeing.
It's about the ability to remain engaged and humane in the presence of difference.
That is the thriving democracy.
That's where we'll leave it for this deep dive. A huge thank you to the author of the 7 Critical Literacies, and of course, to all of you for listening.
It's been a pleasure.
Now, here's a final thought for you to carry into your week. We talked a lot about capacity today, but I want you to look around your own life. Identify one area where the world feels illegible to you. Maybe it's your retirement fund, maybe it's local zoning laws. And just ask yourself, what literacy am I missing here? And conversely, where are you the expert? Where can you hold the door open for someone else? Something to mull over. We'll see you next time.